Hi everybody, Edward here from renegadeinvestor.co.uk, and today I'm going to be talking about, is Bitcoin still a good investment in 2016? The reason I've decided to make this video today is that I have spoken to so many people recently who really feel like they've missed the boat with making an investment into Bitcoin. And I think the reason for this is that in hindsight, they see that the price of Bitcoin was very low in 2015 when it was consolidating between $180 and $300, and they really feel like now that the price has climbed up to, almost $800 highs in 2016, that they've really missed the boat again on making an investment in Bitcoin. And I think this is largely in part to the fact that the mainstream media has done a really bad job in helping people understand just how strong the fundamentals are that are driving Bitcoin and the attributes of the currency and network which make it such a great investment opportunity. So today I'm going to be talking about why Bitcoin is not only a good but potentially a great investment opportunity in 2016, why investors have not yet missed the boat with Bitcoin, and why Bitcoin in 2016 still offers one of the greatest risk-reward investment opportunities in history. And we'll also take a look at all the factors that are currently driving Bitcoin fundamentals this year. So first up, let's take a look at some of the key points from Bitcoin over the last year. So for starters, over $1 billion in venture capital has been invested into Bitcoin startups. And the importance of this is that all that money will be going into building services and businesses that meet three of the main requirements that are needed in order to bring retail investors and the general public into the Bitcoin space. So for example, they're going to build trustworthy services, they're going to build applications that make it much easier for the general public and gives them the ability to invest in Bitcoin. And thirdly, it was going to provide huge utility from the services and businesses that are created, not only unique services but also ones that compete with the legacy financial system as well. Next up, we have transaction volume, which has almost doubled year on year from 115,000 transactions per day to 230,000 transactions per day currently. And this shows a really healthy growth in the amount of people that are using the network. And it gives us a clearer picture than the amount of wallets that have been created, because obviously one user can have multiple wallets. And so the transaction volume is really important at calculating the Metcalfe value of the network, which I will also go into shortly. So next up, almost 75% of all Bitcoins have now been created, which puts the number at around 16 million in circulation. And you have to also factor in that between 1 and 4 million Bitcoins have probably been lost. So this is important to understand because it shows that Bitcoin is finite, it's a sound money, it protects against inflation, which for me is its primary function right now. In addition to that, the inflation rate of new Bitcoins being created has just dropped from 8% to 4%, and I'll go into more on that later on. And finally, Bitcoin has recently hit all-time high market capitalization of around $14 billion. And market cap is obviously the amount of Bitcoins in circulation times the price. And this is important because it shows that people are beginning to trust Bitcoin. More money is moving into the Bitcoin economy. And it really shows that people believe that Bitcoin will have longevity. So it's good to factor in all four of these things we just talked about when looking at a potential investment into Bitcoin in 2016. So with all of these points in mind, let's see how it's affected the Bitcoin price over the last 12 months and why Bitcoin is still a good investment in 2016. Now, if you're new to Bitcoin, one thing you will notice is that Bitcoin will constantly go through bubble and hype phases, and then it will go into a bear market and consolidation. And we have seen this multiple times with Bitcoin. And you can see on the chart here that in 2013, we had a massive rise in the price of Bitcoin to over $1,000. And then in 2014, we saw a long drawn out consolidation in the price where the price dropped from a high of $1,142 right the way down to about $160 in 2015. And you can see on the chart here that in 2015 we just saw consolidation in the price between $180 and $300, and it wasn't until October 2015 where the price broke out of this downward trend and we're now into an upward trend channel and a new bull market. Now, there are a lot of different reasons why the price has run up in the last 12 months, which I'll get into shortly. But I think this is the reason why a lot of people think they have missed the boat again with Bitcoin. Because if you're from the outside looking in, perhaps you're new to Bitcoin, you don't know too much about it, and you see that the price has gone from 250 to an average of 650 at the moment with 160% price increase, it's easy to think that you missed the boat again with Bitcoin. But I'm going to show you now why in 2016 Bitcoin is still in its infancy, and that The recent price move we've seen over the last 12 months is just literally the beginning stage of a next huge bull run, which will go far beyond the last highs we saw in 2013. So the next chart we're going to look at, which shows that Bitcoin could still be a great investment in 2016, is the Bitcoin Metcalfe value. Now, Metcalfe's law states that a value of a network is proportional to the square of the number of connected users of the system. Now, with Bitcoin, it's really difficult to estimate how many people are using the system and network, but it is proportional to the amount of transactions per day. So as a way of calculating the Metcalfe value of the Bitcoin network, Reddit user PlagueDr0 created this chart which shows the correlation between the Bitcoin price and the amount of transactions per day. And you can see that from 2011 to halfway through 2014, there is a really strong correlation between the Bitcoin price and the amount of transactions per day, which represents the Metcalfe value of the network. However, you can see that halfway through 2014, we started to see divergence between the Bitcoin price and the Metcalfe value of the network. And I think this was due to the biggest Bitcoin exchange hack in history at Mt. Gox, which caused this divergence. But this creates a really good investment opportunity because if you look at the ratio of the Metcalfe value to the Bitcoin price at the bottom of the chart, you can see that historically it was hovering around 1 to 1, whereas now it is around 10 to 1. So if we see a correction of this divergence from the Bitcoin price to the Metcalfe value of the network, we could see a multiple $1,000 Bitcoin price in the near future. The next reason why I personally believe that Bitcoin is still a great investment opportunity in 2016 is the Bitcoin mining reward halving, which happened on July the 10th, 2016, which took the supply of new Bitcoin being created down by 50% and took the inflation rate of new Bitcoins being created from 8% down to 4%. As you can see from this chart, when Bitcoin was first created, 50 new Bitcoins were created every 10 minutes. Now in 2016 we are down to 12.5, and the important takeaway point from this is that Bitcoin works in the exact opposite way of fiat currency like the dollar, the pound, the euro and the yuan, in that the supply decreases over time as to exponentially increasing like fiat currency. And this is what makes it such a good store of value and such a good investment opportunity. Now, looking at this chart which shows the last Bitcoin halving in November 2012, you can see that 2 months after the halving, the price increased 1900% from $13 up to $260. Now, before everyone gets too excited, I'm not expecting a 1900% increase over the next 2 months in Bitcoin. Obviously, during the last halving in 2012, the market capitalization of Bitcoin was much lower. But with the reduction in supply, if we continue to see growth in demand, this could easily push the Bitcoin price up multiples over the next 12 months. Another really important thing to understand why Bitcoin is still such a great investment opportunity in 2016 is just how much money there is floating around in all other major asset classes in the world that are at or near all-time highs as we speak. Taking a look at the approximate market cap of all the other major asset classes, we have tradable commercial real estate at 17 trillion, tradable residential real estate at 40 trillion, global stock markets at 70 trillion, the global bond and debt markets at a humongous 200 trillion, narrow currency, which is all the coins, notes and basic checking accounts at 28.6 trillion, and the gold market at 10 trillion. And this gives us a total of $365 trillion currently invested in all these other major asset classes. Again, this is why people have not missed a boat with Bitcoin, not even close. It really puts the $10 billion market cap of Bitcoin in perspective when it's literally a drop in the ocean compared to the currency that's invested in all other major asset classes. On top of this, if we were to see a 5% wealth transfer from all these major asset classes that are extremely overvalued into Bitcoin over a 6-year period, which would take the amount of Bitcoins in circulation to around 16 and 18 million coins, then you could expect an individual Bitcoin price of around $560,000 or around £430,000. Now, I don't give financial advice, but these figures show that you really don't need to invest more than 1 to 5% of your net worth into Bitcoin, depending on how risk adverse you are or how big your portfolio is, to make potentially huge returns on investment in the future. And that is why right now Bitcoin has one of the best risk reward perspectives that has ever been seen in human history. And following on from this, the amount of money printing by central banks, which is blowing these huge asset bubbles in the first place, is not even decreasing, it's still increasing. And it's increasing the amount of potential currency that could find its way into Bitcoin in the future. What we are seeing right now is a coordinated effort by all the biggest central banks in the world to keep the global economic house of cards from crashing. The problem with this is that they are systematically devaluing all of fiat government currencies we use today, but this plays right into the hands of Bitcoin, which again makes it such a good investment in 2016 in that it protects your purchasing power from this kind of debasement. Right now, $200 billion per month is being printed by central banks globally, and in fact in the last week, in the middle of August 2016, the Bank of England has just announced that they're increasing their QE by 75 billion and have just lowered interest rates to 0.25%. And that's why when people say QE to infinity, they're not joking. If QE and money printing doesn't increase year on year, the global economy will collapse. Just to emphasize the effect this is having on Bitcoin and why people new to Bitcoin in 2016 have not missed the boat, look at how the devaluation of fiat currency by central banks in two of the three biggest economies in the world, China and Japan, is affecting the Bitcoin markets. As the People's Bank of China has continued to devalue the yuan almost 10% since August 2015, more and more money has been flowing out into Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin exchanges in China have recorded almost 90% market share of Bitcoin trading, which shows there's a big appetite for Bitcoin in China. And I think this is especially spurred on by the fact that the Chinese have $23 trillion in deposits that they need to protect. Moving on to Japan, we can see that since the Bank of Japan implemented negative interest rates and promised more QE money printing stimulus following the Brexit vote in the UK, Bitcoin volume on the biggest Japanese exchange Bitflyer recorded a noticeable jump, and it really shows a direct correlation between central bank money printing and interest in Bitcoin. And with this trend looking set to continue and escalate, that is why if you're new to Bitcoin in 2016, you have not yet missed the boat. The next reason why Bitcoin is still a great investment opportunity in 2016 is the systemic risk among global systemically important banks. Just take a look at the interconnected web of counterparty risk amongst the world's biggest banks that would make any golden orb spider proud. The takeaway point here is that in the potential event that one of these global systemically important banks goes down, it's going to affect the whole world, and thus investing in Bitcoin before the collapse of one of these banks will be much cheaper than investing afterwards. Like we saw in 2008 when investment bank Lehman Brothers collapsed, all it takes is the collapse of one of these banks to be a catalyst for global contagion, and one of the biggest, Deutsche Bank, is exhibiting signs similar to Lehman Brothers in 2008. As a result, Bitcoin is being viewed more and more as a way to reduce counterparty risk to the legacy financial system, and that's why, in my opinion, Bitcoin in 2016 still presents a great investment opportunity and a way to protect yourself from this risk in the existing financial system. But if you're new to Bitcoin, please approach it with caution and give it respect. Bitcoin is a brand new asset class, and with new asset classes comes significant risk. As I stated earlier in the video, I do not give financial advice, but at the moment you really don't need to risk more than 1 to 5% of your net worth for potentially big returns in Bitcoin. In addition to this, make sure you do your research and learn the best techniques for securing your Bitcoin. And if you're investing long term and not actively trading, make sure to not leave Bitcoins on centralized exchanges for extended periods. So is Bitcoin still a good investment opportunity in 2016? In my opinion, based on all the information I've talked about in this video, there is a really solid case that Bitcoin in 2016 offers one of the best risk-reward perspective investment opportunities in human history, at a point in time where there has never been so much risk on a global scale in the legacy financial system. And in terms of using Bitcoin as one potential way to protect yourself and prosper from this, in 2016, I don't believe anyone has yet missed the boat with Bitcoin.